live.
Okay, welcome everybody out there. Sarah,
Hey, everybody. YouTube world.
glad you showed up, Sarah. Okay, Beth, I heard you're leading this.
Yeah, the workshop is going to be about the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, to go over the details of the plan and maybe just start brainstorming on what you guys kind of projects or where you want to use this funding. So just briefly, on March 11th, they Congress passed the plan, and we are allotted $333,289, and we'll get that in 2 payments. We've already received our first payment, so we get half now, and we'll get half in a year. And these funds are anything that we've spent from March 3rd through December of 2024. And we have until December 2026 to use the funds. Yeah, they haven't really said if we don't use it, if we have to give it back, but I'm sure we'll use these funds. So we can use these funds for they have like 6 categories that I listed in the memo. They can support public health response, address negative economic impacts, replace public sector revenue loss, premium pay for essential workers, water and sewer infrastructure, and broadband infrastructure. So I highlighted a few of the areas where I thought that it would fit for the town, and then just go from there, I guess. So I have like there's several documents. The U.S. Department of Treasury created like a 2-page PDF that I attached, and then they have a 8-page fact sheet. And then they also have a guidance that's like 35 pages long. That's really detailed. So I just kind of took all those documents and just gave you the cliff notes.
Perfect.
So the first one is under number 2, which is addressing the negative economic impacts caused by public health emergency. These funds can be used for supporting small businesses that have had financial challenges during COVID. And we can use these to help them with we can also we can use them for like a loan or a grant or in-kind assistance and counseling programs for these businesses. I suggested we can use these funds for Grandkids Learning Center and KKFR since they came in about a month ago. So their request does fall under these plans. We can use this funding for those. We can also use it for other small businesses in town, like the restaurants or tourism, or we can even help families and workers in town. If we were going to do that, I would suggest giving money to the Grant Foundation, since they already have everything set up to like help people apply and get those fundings. There's also, Sarah's been working with this state. There's a program called Colorado Main Street Open for Business. We figured we can use some of this money to match the funds for that program. It would fall under this as well. And number 3, what I'm referencing is the fact sheet. They have that's what these numbers are coming from. So serving the hardest hit communities and families. This could be used to invest in housing and neighborhoods, such as areas that there's a lot of homelessness, affordable housing development, housing vouchers, or residential housing, counseling and housing assistance for highly economically impacted neighborhoods. But with that, there is some kind of restrictions. We have to make sure that we're within a qualified census tract, and their families living in this tract that the money would go to, via tribal government or other populations, households, or geographic areas disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. I think if we can provide documentation that any of those things have occurred, that we could probably use this funds for housing or homelessness and stuff like that. Number 5 would be providing premium pay for essential workers. There's a list here of like different, like, hospitals, nursing homes, workers in the farm and food production area, grocery stores and restaurants, janitors, sanitation workers, public health and safety staff, truck drivers, transit staff, warehouse workers, childcare workers, educators, school staff, social services, and human services. So we can use these funds and give them to businesses that have these types of workers, and they can, give their workers raises or anything like that. And then
And how long do we have until to spend the dollars?
till 2026.
And do we have to have plan for it before then, so we can set some aside in our,
Yeah, we can wait to use all this money
Housing.
next year if we wanted to, or
portion of it?
use it this year. But yeah, we can hold on to it. And then number 6 is investing in water and sewer infrastructure. I don't know where we're exactly at with our I with the sewer plant, so we can use that to replace any of our mains and things like that we have been budgeting for a few years and just haven't got to because of like COVID or funding reasons. And then the last,
Gas lines up.
no gas line. And then broadband infrastructure. They focused on broadband because they noticed with everybody being shut down and having to do online school and things like that, there's lots of areas that don't have adequate broadband infrastructure.
Right.
So it can go towards that if the town wants to do that.
So was Mountain Parks Electric, were they working towards broadband? Was it one of our local agencies up here focusing harder on broadband or not? Do you remember who?
I think it was Mountain Parks.
Mountain Parks Electric.
Yeah, there's a few different entities involved. I haven't really been a part of those conversations, so I can't really speak to that.
Okay.
That's really kind of the previous manager
Yeah.
there. So
Okay.
we can try to get an update for that though.
We did do a study with Winter Park. I can't remember the vendor we used, but that was a few years ago.
We did do, okay.
We shared the cost with Winter Park.
There's many people that are moving here and doing their work remotely. It's going to be really valuable for us as the lines get clogged down and
Right.
can't log in and things move slower and slower depending on the day.
And then when we gave the restaurants a little bit more help in February, since we gave them the money February 25th, doesn't qualify, so we can't get reimbursed for that because it's
Okay.
expenses March 3rd and forward.
Okay.
So
So there's not really much you can't do.
right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't go to Vegas. And,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay.
well, you could, except for like Denver. Some of them are stars. Put it all on black. Hope you double your money.
Yeah, there's a lot of areas that we can use this in. It's just, I guess,
We
where
had,
our priorities are and
we had a staff discussion on this about a week and a half ago. And one of the most interesting ideas that came up was this Main Street matching grant where you can leverage this money, leverage the money from DOLA and make a bigger impact as opposed to just, helping business along Main Street. You can find a way to maximize that money. Certainly go along.
Sarah, do we have an idea of what you'd be looking at dollar wise for a match for Main Street?
Hi, everybody. So the Colorado Main Street Open for Business program is, it's kind of similar to our business enhancement program. It's for facade improvements and also energy efficiency. The businesses have to do a 20% match to whatever they're requesting. I've talked to probably 5 or 6 businesses that are interested in participating either way, because 20% is not a huge deal, but for some people, they just don't have the money. So I was, thinking we could use this money for that match. How much they're asking for, it's all dependent. I talked to some people that wanted to do some repainting, maybe put in a new roof or, a new parking lot area. So it kind of runs the gamut. I told them to start getting estimates together because the business owners will have to submit an application as well as the town. So I really have no idea like what we would be requesting. The initial meetings with DOLA said the municipalities could apply for up to $1 million. So it's quite a bit of money, for the businesses. Now, I don't think we're going to use $1 million or, but I have no idea.
And
Does that answer your
congratulations
question?
on your success with the other Main Street grant.
Oh, thanks.
When I came in and talked to Ed about, I've got a list of 18 items, sorry, man. But one of them, I think, is some low hanging fruit that we could look at is Eisenhower is rapidly developing in the block between US 40 and the railroad tracks is rapidly developing into a neat little commercial area, really founded by the Fraser River Beer Company. And they're pushing pretty hard up against, and the Fraser Auto has really stepped up too. Since Hilly's closed, they've leased that space over there too, but they've become a lot busier. They're the only shop in town now. And we've got EMS sitting right in the middle of all this. And to look maybe for some alternative location for them and begin to look that building. Interestingly enough, was actually built by my uncle Ed. It was their community library for a period of time. But that building itself could be a business too. And there's quite a bit of parking there as well around behind it that could help alleviate some parking issues that are developing as Eisenhower gets busier. So just another idea, because we've talked a lot about the Riverwalk district, but that's pretty much a raw project at this point as far as a blank palette. But Eisenhower really has unique buildings, a couple of good booming businesses, and maybe there's some ways we can help that stretch of street out. So, and they're off the highway, which is nice. Kind of brings businesses off US 40. So,
and Andy, a couple of the businesses that were interested are the dog grooming place. She was interested in doing some. Well, that's actually our building, but
yeah.
I think that would be a good benefit. Fraser River Beer Company, Winter Park, Fraser Tire and Auto, and then also Tim Kepke, who owns that building on the corner of Eisenhower and 40, needs some love too, like the exterior. So, I mean, there's a lot of work that could be done with, with that DOLA money and the 20% match. So we're on the same page.
yeah.
Didn't we give the building to the library? And then the library gave the building to
The building belongs to us, hasn't it? I believe.
No.
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 It belongs to EMS.
The EMS building? No.
Yeah,
It was EMS.
Yeah,
Okay.
didn't we give it to the library and then the library gave it to EMS or something like that?
Probably sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, probably not for much, but it's
I
interesting.
would imagine if we could find a good home for them, that we could So it just seems like a good commercial area that actually and it's kind of a struggle for EMS at this point to try and hang on to their terrain
Right.
and the brewery, and it's just not the best location for them, I wouldn't think, but it is a great business location. So,
Well, we don't own that building, and there's a residence next to it, then there's the dog grooming place that we do own. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that whole area from our building down to the EMS could be all turned commercial.
and of course, we got the Mercantile across the street and Elizabeth's art studio, and then those Worst Western, and those are residences now, but they're interesting buildings too. It's really neat looking street. So. And then the other larger project that I talked to Ed about a little bit, and I've just been kind of trying to float the idea. We've got three public water systems in the valley. We've got Fraser's, we've got Winter Park Ranch, and we've got Winter Park, Grant County #1. And all three systems are really at risk at this point. Winter Park is at risk from fires. If there were a fire in the Vasquez Basin, it would could shut their system down with the amount of ash and things that could come, and the after effects of a fire on a surface collection water system are well known. Of course, Nat, as when he was our town person in charge of books, basically, he always had us have a $7 million line item on the budget every year, if you remember, for water treatment, because we're the wells, as soon as they're deemed under the influence of surface water during testing, then we've got to move quickly to build a water treatment plant. And I would assume that if our wells are under the influence of surface water, Renner Park Ranch's wells would be too. They're in the same well field. So we have a regional wastewater plant. Could this be something we could begin to talk about with these three districts, a regional water treatment plant? And all three throw into this together, and maybe some of this money could go to at least some initial studies on the plumbing, the pumping requirements, obviously. But is this feasible? And then we wouldn't necessarily tie the systems together, but we could if with water treatment. Of course, we can't tie in, and I know everybody knows this, but just briefly, we can't tie into Winter Park system because it's surface water. And Winter Park right now could tie into, we have to tie both ways, obviously. So, and so these two well system and surface water systems are not compatible with the treatment we have now. And I believe, Granby had to do the same thing a few years ago. Their well waters finally came under the influence of surface water, and they built, I believe it was a $9 million treatment plant, I think.
Yeah, it's
So,
state of the art.
next to the hospital there. So anyway, that's a resiliency issue that could really get us in a hurry if there's an issue.
So you can treat well water with it, but it's geared towards surface water, right?
Right. Well, if you're doing a treatment plant, it could basically take anything that it could take the surface water and the well water both. Yes.
So our water plant isn't a treatment plant or just treats for well water?
Right. It doesn't have the mechanical ability to if we get under the influence of surface water, then we'd have to build a much more elaborate treatment plant.
I think right now we're just using chlorine.
Yeah.
That's it.
And that also gives us the ability to use St. Louis Creek again, the diversion point in St. Louis Creek.
Right.
We could bring that water back into the system again. So
It's pretty low right now.
what's that?
It's pretty low right now.
Yeah.
It was running good, but it's low now. Anyway.
But I think the first two items on the list, we should look at the Fraser the Learning Center. And I have trouble keeping up with names, sorry.
Right.
And KFFR are the two on the table that I think really do have a lot to do with COVID. So.
Do we know if the daycare applied for any of the PPP money? Does anybody,
I know she'll be here during the regular meeting.
Okay.
You could ask her, but
They,
I know
they,
they're
they
really
did
struggling.
apply for the county and Winter Park, as I asked. both.
Yeah.
But they both of the people I talked to said that would have come from the Graham Foundation. So it'll be interesting if they got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hopefully the rest of our neighbors and community members think as much about daycare as we do.
Well, and it's critical.
Will be interesting.
Yeah.
You know, it's the, from what I understand, I think they might have spoke of this at the last meeting, $13 an hour.
Mhm.
So they lost 5 of their daycare people. They can't stay open 5 days a week. They're open 4 days a week. It's pulling people out of the workforce.
They're childcare professionals. They really are. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
13, yeah. So to be able to fund them for that, to bring them up, to get the staffing up to $15 an hour.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
temporary fix. 'Cause how do you maintain that?
Well, they're going to charge more per day.
Yeah, they're gonna
Right.
be charging more.
This is like a short.
it Gets them through this,
Short, yeah, fix.
yeah.
well, it's 100,000 they lost during COVID. So,
Well, that's why I was
Closures.
wondering if they applied for the
right.
federal money. 'Cause-
So that they can't stay open 5 days a week because they don't have the staff.
That's right.
but,
They
well,
can't afford it. They don't have the staff and they can't afford it.
Yeah, some of that maybe they just can't get the staff because that's what a lot
Yeah.
of places have. They can't get staff, period.
Yeah.
Because they're people are still getting unemployment and the $600 a week check.
But they're giving away 20% of their income by not being open.
Right.
That day. So I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah.
I can understand if they can't find staff, but
Yeah. No, they lost like 6. They're really shorthanded, so.
Probably went to Wendy's. They're paying 17 an hour.
And how many
McDonald's
personnel are
started-
we down in our flower department?
In
And for the staff doing flowers and landscaping? 5, we're 5 down,
We were wanting 6 total, temporary summer help, and
Right.
we have 1.
right?
Wow.
what do we start at? What's our stage starting? What is that?
The range is something like 15 to 17 starting.
That's fine. But Wendy's is short staffed too, and they're paying, I'm short staffed.
Yeah.
Make it straight. Safeway streets.
To start that discussion about the water treatment plant would make a lot of sense. And is that something that would be a good role for our advisory committee?
Yeah, I talked to Ron about that briefly at the hardware store the other day. And that would be a good role for them. So,
Something to do.
Yeah, they've all been with it for a while,
Yeah.
Chopping at the bit.
you know, and if we had to set aside, like you say, some of these dollars to help with a study and
Right.
research to see what it would take. And
mechanically how this works, obviously. So,
You
Yeah,
need,
it's a big
you need a
problem.
consultant that can evaluate not
Right.
only our water rights, but also Winter Park Ranch's water rights and the other district you're looking to. And see if it's feasible and
Yeah.
put together some estimates of what it would take. The treatment plant it'd be expensive, but
sure. But I
But
sure
down
hate to
the
see
road,
3
we're
of
gonna need it.
3 of them go in, or 2 of them at
Yeah.
least. So
Right.
Winter Park's pretty safe as long as they don't have a fire. Their treatment is up to snuff for the water they're taking in. But
And our population at this end, isn't it about equal to what Granby is and Granby Ranch? If you take a Fraser Winter Park compared to, because that services, well, it doesn't.
Year-round population?
It doesn't
taps, I guess, would be
service
maybe
the
the-
Old part of Granby.
Taps would be roughly the same.
Yeah.
Probably have a few more taps, but year-round residents are probably a few hundred less than Granby.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then housing, I mean, the housing's not outside the realm of this, is it? Or,
No, she mentioned it.
We have to make sure that we fall within a qualified census tract, that there's people living there. We're tribal government. And then we have to prove that the population households or graphic areas are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic.
That'll be kind of a tougher one to qualify
well,
for.
we're,
Depending on what we need it for.
I don't think so, because the pandemic took away probably 40% of the local housing that we had.
Yeah.
Because people started using the units themselves more, and so they turned to Airbnb to rent for the couple weeks they had to go back to the city. at a time. So that changed the way we,
Yeah, Katie, we just had a report from Northwest Cog that you sat in on also that showed that exact effect.
Interesting.
Is the number of people that moved here and all the mountain communities full time has had a tremendous impact.
So what do we have cooking now that we can apply those funds towards?
I just read in something else. It has to disproportionately impact low-income families and communities of color and has exacerbated the system health and economic inequalities. It could be housing assistance, it could be affordable housing development.
Yep.
But they're kind of specific.
didn't think we
On
were
the
allowed to use
needs.
that term anymore.
So I think we have to just have to documentation because they can come back and audit all this stuff. And then if it doesn't qualify, we have to pay it back.
Oh, yeah.
So, but yeah,
So we'd have to research to see if we're in a qualified census tract of low income. That's not a hard thing to qualify. I think you call DOLA the state demographer, and they'll help you with that.
Yeah, Jackson County was the lowest annual income in our Northwest Cog district for a long time, but we are now, since oil and gas came into Jackson somewhat, but we consistently are right at the bottom of the average annual income in Northwest Colorado in the resort area here at least. So,
Jackson County, is it by Walden area?
yeah,
This one, this one.
it is Walden, yeah.
It is.
In
Well ran.
terms of where the population's at.
So we're supposed to come up with a list or priority or,
If I may, if you come up with maybe a range of, these 5 suggestions, we can do some more research on that. We don't have to spend the money right away. We've got to 2026, the end of 2026 to do that.
spend it, but
Uh,
24 to declare what we want.
no, it has to be, we can't, it's expenses through 2024, but we can like reimburse ourselves, up to 26. It's kind of a weird how they say it, but so we can do something on December 31st, 2024 and reimburse ourselves with 25.
I think the big question that's going to come before the board is, do you want to use these funds to help, the daycare facility and the radio station? That's a neat decision. Both of them can qualify that, and both of them are on the agenda tonight to approve that. Whether you take it out of this or whether you find a different source of funds to do that and preserve this for maybe other projects. But if you put together a list, for example, you talked about bringing water infrastructure, maybe doing a study. We can do things like receive bids for consultant that can come in and maybe do that engineering study and put together kind of a master plan of what that would look like. Or if you want to do something with Sarah and DOLA, we can do a little bit more research. And that's $1 million, and whether or not we ask the business owners to kick in 20%, or they kick in 10%, we kick in 10%. It's still, at the end of the day, they're still going to get those facade improvements. Property values will increase. You'll have more walkability in your downtown. Give us a couple of ideas, and we can start, handing out responsibilities for, let's do some research and bring this back to the board.
And then, Ed, did you get that list that I dropped off before you came in a few days ago from Judy Amicable's office at the state of all the different
Yes.
grant opportunities?
Yes.
So she came to Granby a few days ago and handed out a list of different grant opportunities related also to COVID. And she said that she felt these were healthy enough alternatives that communities ought to hire themselves a full-time grant writer to go after them. So there's a lot of options out there, it sounds like, for further funding related to this. So. And the housing discussion was really, it's scary. I mean, it's in Parnell, like, it's hard to say exactly why people aren't going back to work, but we also know there's no place to live. That's a big reason. So,
Yeah, no, it's
yeah.
up
so,
here, it's real tough.
Yeah.
So could we set some aside
on the thought that we'll find a place to build something for low income people?
Certainly,
that-
certainly that's an option, certainly. I think next week when we have our work session, we're going to talk about priorities, but then we're going to talk about affordable housing next, and then property acquisition, and all that's tied to, where your priorities are and how we'll spend those monies and where those funds may come from, so.
I will say
I'm
one,
s-
I'm sorry.
I'm sure we can go through 333,000 real fast.
Yeah, we just went through about 20 million here, pretty quickly.
Doesn't take long.
There's 70,000.
Right, so
Yeah.
we're down into, yeah.
You're down to 260 now. so.
Hopefully not 70. Hopefully they.
Found a few other sources
Yeah.
too, yeah.
I would say that the one thing about the facade improvements program to DOLA, the 20% match for the facade and energy improvements, that is a, businesses can basically apply for that as they can. So if you wanted to wait a certain amount of time to see how many businesses actually apply for this, that want to use those grant fund dollars, then we're able to use some of our monies from this for matching funds. That's something that we could look at. So it is a rotating, basically as applications go in, they'll be approved by DOLA. There's no application deadline or cycles for these grant opportunities. So if you do like the idea of doing the facade improvements in town, downtown Main Street, you want to wait to a certain point in time to say, okay, you said you want to apply for it, let's see if they actually apply for it and get an estimate together and put in some work to get those funds. You can do that too. So that's a good fund that's just going to be used as it's applied for.
I
Well,
would,
there's
I
only
would,
7 million in that pot,
Right.
so,
I would say strike early
yeah.
Yeah.
before the money runs out.
Paperwork has to be done by next.
But the 20% match of 1 million is 20,000, right?
200,000.
200.
200,000.
Development ideas. Housing, of course, is number one issue
Yeah.
in our community.
Well, if you use the funds to help out the childcare center, you're doing basically premium pay for essential workers, so that falls into that category. Um, I'm not sure where the broadband initiative is. I just haven't stuck my toe into that water yet. But, you could maybe, if we could do some conversations with Winter Park to see what they're doing, or Granby or Grand County. It may be some of that last mile emphasis that they could really help out here, especially some of our business areas. I mean, there's a whole lot of options there. I quite frankly, I wasn't expecting to have an answer to that.
No, right.
Yeah.
Because it is pretty broad, and it's, we'll make sure we use the money correctly.
Well, I know that childcare is just barely hanging on. And as they've said, they have a huge waiting list, something like 75 families. So more we can do to support them and getting them through this tough period. It would be a great long-term investment, not a short-term, but a big long-term investment for us.
Well, I'm hearing that we're kind of rallying around a couple of these points. I didn't see the broadband that. I did hear some conversation about water and sewer infrastructure. Of course, assisting with the essential workers, but also providing maybe some of those economic impacts, especially if you can use that, some matching funds with DOLA or something like that. I mean, those are three strong areas that where we can put our focus on and come back at another work session with maybe some recommendations at that time.
Okay. Incorporate anything else into this whole work session?
Let's see. really. Gonna cover the American CARES Act.
Cliff Notes version, which is awesome. Complicated.
Okay, that's it. 20-minute break, I guess.
Outside, a little fresh air.
Yeah.
Sat down on the couch or something.
All right, Mayor, we're up and running.
Perfect, thank you. I'd like to call to order the Town of Frazier's regular board meeting on July 7th, 2021 at 7 PM. Can I please have a roll call?
Eileen Waldo.
Arnell Quinn.
Katie Souls.
And Philip Vanderneel. Can I have an approval of the agenda, please? A motion to approve the agenda?
I would like to ask if the consent agenda, is this the right time for that, or if we could take that.
Already on each.
Item.
I already got it in my notes.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, everybody, we are getting ready to head into 3 executive sessions. So it's probably going to be an hour, but we'll give you a 5-minute countdown before we head back into the regular meeting. So can I have a motion to go into executive session?
Who's got the paper?
And we move to enter into an executive session for a conference with the town attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS section 24-6402 4B, and for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-6402 4E regarding conservation easement, including town attorney Rod McGowan, special counsel Melinda Beck, town manager Ed Cannon, town clerk Antoinette McVeigh, assistant town manager Michael Brock, town planner Catherine Trotter.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Rod's got to do that.
Is it still on?
And then, oh, shoot. You didn't do it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the record, I would note as town attorney that my understanding is that the entire discussion of executive session will be within the scope of the attorney-client privilege and therefore need not be recorded.
Okay, back in a minute. Or 60.